Good afternoon. Oh, wrong way. So we heard a little bit about Wild Salmon Connections this morning. And it's a Missing Salmon Alliance initiative headed up by me. I was the person herding all of these cats. And as well as the Missing Salmon Alliance organisations, we also had an international flavour. We worked with our Norwegian colleagues from Norwegian Salmon Rivers. I won't try and say the Nordic version. The Atlantic Salmon Federation, who work on the Atlantic side in Canada and the US. The Pacific Salmon Foundation, which is in Canada, and Long Live the Kings, which is in the US on the Pacific side. So we wanted to get a flavour that was more international, bring all those partners together. So it was in January. We wanted to inspire people, we wanted to show positive solutions and encourage environmental leadership, and we wanted to focus on the future, in particular looking at nature restoration and funding for that. And our message, I guess, which is right at the bottom, so I apologise that you guys at the back won't be able to see it, was that wild salmon are in crisis, but there is hope, and we must commit to bold action, and it must start now. But it's slightly weird to come to a conference and talk about a conference. So what I'm going to do is not really talk about the conference per se, but talk about what happened and what we hope will happen next. Because, you know, hopefully it wasn't a talking shop, and hopefully progress has been made and will be made. So my next slide is about so what, who cares? And I'm going to talk and give just one example because Pedro told me to hurry up before I even started, by the way. So I'm going to talk about a stronger, louder voice for salmon, about keeping salmon at the top of the policy agenda, about sharing and learning, and then about funding for catchment restoration at scale. So I put this on as a bit as an indulgence for myself because I love this picture. I was really keen to work with and get completely fabulous women involved. And we did do that. So you've heard about Fawn, you know Elle. This is Ella McSweeney, who is a journalist, and she facilitated the whole event from start to finish, including grilling our politicians, which she did extremely well, I think. But interestingly, in terms of what happened next, she also she works for RTE in Ireland, and she also wrote a piece in the Irish Times about what needs to happen next for Irish salmon. So impact there already. And interestingly, we had Lara here, who is a postdoc astrophysicist, I believe, so working on that and doing a fly fishing fair in Germany. But what I really wanted to talk about is Alistair Fothergill, who's in the top, your right-hand corner picture. And he works with David Attenborough on all of those documentaries that are shown on a Sunday evening on the telly. And he talked about how important it was to tell the story of salmon in an inspiring and accessible way. And he gave an example of what that means and why that's important. And he talked about the link between these very cute puffins that the public all love and sand eels and the declining sand eels population. And he told us that Therese Coffey, who was the Environment Minister at the time, saw that, and that directly impacted on the UK government then introducing a ban on sand eel fishing in UK waters. So that telling of the story in an accessible way, in a big platform like that, has an impact. So it's important that we tell our story, and I think we did that at Wild Salmon Connections, and it's something that we as a community need to carry on doing. So what next? As a result of Wild Salmon Connections, we're working with the Pacific Salmon Foundation, and they have been running a Wild Salmon Day since 2019. And they have invited us to join them so that we can raise the profile of wild salmon, tell the story that I've just been talking about, and try and build that narrative about why salmon's important. So myself and colleagues are working on that, and we're going to join them. It's on the 1st of June. We don't have much time, but hopefully that will build in the years to come. So the second box that I wanted to talk about was keeping wild salmon at the top of the policy agenda. So I'm going to claim 3 ministers and 2 presidents at Wild Salmon Connections. And so this is a Norwegian minister who was absolutely amazing, being grilled by Ella McSweeney. He came over from Norway, obviously, to be there with us. He went into meetings with NGOs to start off with. He followed up with meetings with Daniel Zeitner, the UK minister, afterwards. So it's important that we have ministers here. But what's also important, I think, is that all the briefing and the work that goes on behind the scenes, so that conversations about wild salmon are being held for days before and days afterward, weeks before actually, that wild salmon is important, and ministers, the top of government, are understanding what the pressures are and what can be done. And I just want to point out this picture, because this is Mark Lloyd, who is the CEO of the Rivers Trust. This is Daniel Zeitner, the UK minister. But this is Ruth Allen, who at the back, and she was involved in briefing the minister. And that's really important because she deals with wild salmon policy both at a UK level, but she's also the vice president of NASCO. So getting her there as well feeds into international policy with respect to wild salmon. How am I doing for time? I'll go quickly. So Alan mentioned the policy asks that were developed by the Missing Salmon Alliance in the run-up to Wild Salmon Connections. And in terms of what next, well, we just had these policy asks put in front of the First Minister. So that is a pretty good next step, I think, with the Missing Salmon Alliance people and FMS working towards making further progress in terms of these asks. But there is another what next, because this is the president of NASCO, Kim Damon Randall. I hope she's still the president of NASCO because she's employed by the US, and who knows what's happening with them these days. So what the Missing Salmon Alliance want to do now is take these overarching themes in terms of policy asks and take it up to an international stage. And can we work together to press the national governments from an international perspective as well? I'll go very quickly on sharing and learning, because obviously a conference is all about sharing and learning. We had 250 attendees from all over the world, not only listening to presentations, but also having chats and discussions throughout all the breaks. One thing that I particularly was interested in is about bycatch. There's a massive gaping hole in our knowledge of bycatch, I think, on this side of the Atlantic, and it was very interesting to hear what's happening on the Pacific. Could we learn from that? Is that something that we can take forward in our work? But there was many other learnings that I'm hearing about when I'm speaking to people, even in this room. So it wasn't just other people telling us, it also gave us an opportunity to have all the good work, or some of the good work that's happening in Scotland, being shared with our international colleagues. So Lorraine Hawkins talked about her project here, and that went down very well. So the final box, if you like, was about funding for restoration. Did we make any progress in terms of that? What's happening next? So there's a number of different approaches put forward. I'm just picking this particular one for what I hope is a very good reason. So this is a slide I stole from Alex Adams' presentation at Wild Salmon Connections. He works for the Rivers Trust. And he has developed this replenish approach, which is a water budgeting approach. And he's been very successful in bringing in organisations like Sainsbury's and Britvic and Lidl and Amazon into funding catchment scale restoration using that approach. And if you look at this map, there's lots of blobs in England, there's a blob there in Ireland, and there's no blobs in Scotland. So, but hopefully that won't stay the case for much longer, because there's now discussions underway to use this approach in Scotland, and the connections are being made with a large infrastructure owner, and there's a collaboration just starting out between the Atlantic Salmon Trust, the Spey Catchment Initiative, and Rivers Trust are supporting, since they're the ones who've got all the experience of this approach. So very, very early days, watch this space, but wouldn't that be great if it was just another approach that we can use to get funding into catchment management? So next steps is continuing with this. So if you were there and you have any examples of what's happened, then please do let me know, because I'm very interested in that. And I'll put up the thank you slide and hand over to Pedro, and hope I spoke quickly enough, Pedro.
It was payback time. Wendy whipped my ass for about 6 months to make things happen. And she did an unbelievable job to get this conference underway. I just want to reflect, we had the First Minister in this room. It has never happened before. And the work that goes into, whether you call it COP26 or Bankery or Fishery Management Scotland conferences or River Trust conferences and Wild Salmon Connections, enables us to be politically strong. And that is what has been going on in the background here. And Wendy is absolutely right. We got some amazing people into the room, and we had some absolutely first-class presentations given over 3 days, which really helped lift. And the stories that came out of the Pacific Northwest, the stories that came out of Norway, the stories that came out of Scotland were just first class, and people really listened to those. So it was terrific. What went wrong? What was not as good as it should have been? And when I look around this room, I'm preaching to the converted. You are the church. And we need to be bringing people from outside our community to look into what we're doing in order that we can then persuade them that river catchment restoration is a really good way forward. We absolutely had the stories. I mean, Alistair Fothergill was off the charts. His Therese Coffey presentation comment was completely right. That's what happened in order to move sand eels forward. Dieter Helm, and Alan Wells mentioned this morning, gave us a format for creating a balance sheet in order that we could look at our rivers with assets and then liabilities. Assets being habitat, communities, number of fish, anglers, liabilities being pollution, I think I've got to move on. Pollution, aquaculture, all the other areas that might be on the liability side. But if you can move all of those forward so that you end up with a better balance sheet for natural capital, that's what Dieter Helm wanted you to do. And it's a really important concept, which I hope people take forward. So Wild Salmon Connections really moved us up the agenda play, and we should take great pride in that. We also had a declaration, and if you can, from this conference, go to the Missing Salmon Alliance website, go to Wild Salmon Connections, and please sign the declaration. The declaration is around the policy asks that we're talking about. Alan did a particularly good job. It was like watching something in the United Nations. We had to get all of the parties who were at Wild Salmon Connections to agree to it. So the wording was agreed. If we go to another Wild Salmon Connections in a couple of years' time, we want to see how we built upon those policy asks. We have got over 150 signatories on that. We would like more. So if you can sign up to that, that would be terrific. So my final pitch to everybody here is we are going to do another Wild Salmon Connections. We're hoping it'll be on the east coast of America. We're hoping that it'll be in a couple of years' time. It is critical that we have good stories to tell. And you guys in there are the people who can deliver on those stories. River catchment restoration needs to happen now, and it needs to happen at pace. All of the building blocks are there. We've been hearing this morning. They're there. But let's be under no illusions. Natural capital hasn't got a return at the moment. It's philanthropic. That's what it is. People are going to be putting money into this on the basis of hope value. There are some really valuable components which we learned at Wild Salmon Connections. The first is data. Within river catchment restoration, you are producing a really valuable data set, and that data set is important to investors. The second area is marketing. If you've got a really good data set, and then you can put that out from a marketing perspective as a corporate, that's helpful. It doesn't demonstrate a return, but it's philanthropic. But you have to get on with it. In this room, you are the early adopters. That's why you're in the room. You're here. You're listening. We need more stories, and we really need the energy to take it forward. And Wild Salmon Connections and the other work that goes on in order to push things forward is all about galvanising action and moving people into that end. But anyway, thank you very much, and it was a terrific conference. Thanks a lot.